Just a heads up, this episode's a bit of a downer. Thought I'd let you know ahead of time. There's a running gag in the super speedy cider squeezy 6000 where Rainbow Dash tries and fails repeatedly to get her hands on a mug of the Apple family's famous cider on the first day of cider season. She eventually gets some after an entire episode of desperation and making an ass out of herself. It's moments like these that spawned a mountain of lighthearted jokes, memes, and competently researched game theory style analysis videos about whether Rainbow Dash is secretly a functioning alcoholic. It's all in good fun, but every time I come across this topic, I always feel like there's some perspective missing to this question beyond a clean yes or no answer, and I feel like it's a perspective I can actually add to the conversation. If you weren't already aware, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I drank in college, but it started getting out of hand in 2017. I was completely toasted the day I became a pony fan. I was at home alone one night when I drunkenly turned on Equestria Girls for the first time, and I took my last drink the night we recorded my first episode the day after Ponycast. I like to joke that ponies cured my alcoholism, but I realized lately that there probably aren't a ton of people in the fandom who've experienced problem drinking in the first place due to their age and other factors, and even fewer who have tried to kick the habit, so I thought it might be kind of fun to tackle this issue through a unique lens. Real quick though, we gotta get the less interesting semantic discussion out of the way of what cider actually is before I can go all psychoanalysis on you. Other people have done this research already, but some context might be important so we're all on the same page. On its own, cider comes in two main forms. The first is the non-alcoholic variety, literally just pressed apple juice, which I most strongly associate with being served piping hot at Santa's village or fresh pressed at my grandma's house. Hey look, it's me. The other kind undergoes a fermentation process and gets sold as an alcoholic beverage averaging 4.5 to 7% ABV, or alcohol by volume. Because the US has to be different from everyone else, here and in Canada, where Friendship is Magic was produced, we use the term cider to refer to non-alcoholic fresh pressed cider, while the fermented alcoholic variety is sold here as hard cider. This distinction caused a lot of headaches when it came to translating Friendship is Magic for an international audience, the majority of which used the word cider to refer almost exclusively to its alcoholic variety. The dialogue in cider-focused episodes had to be altered or downright censored in Latin America, the Middle East, Indonesia, Sweden, and Poland, and Italy and the UK didn't even get an import of the super speedy cider squeezy 6000 due to the international differences in the definition of the word cider. If you're curious, the native version of Friendship is Magic uses some form of the word cider 102 times, over half of them in the episode that inspired this video. Of these, 99 uses are of just the word cider. 2 of them mention apple cider specifically, and 1 is a single mention of mulled cider, which is just hot cider steeped in spices. But when it comes to the matter of whether the cider they drink in the show is alcoholic, I honestly don't really care. I usually accept Occam's razor when it comes to stand-ins for booze in kids shows because it's so easy to overstep bounds when it comes to children's media. During the marketing for the 2007 film Ratatouille, Disney wanted to promote the movie with a bottle of themed wine that you could only buy at Costco, but that project was abandoned after the California Wine Institute told them it was against regulations to put a cartoon character on your wine labels, lest they receive criticism that they could be promoting underage drinking. We can bring up talking points about the fact that the cider has a head and is therefore alcoholic, but this is also a show where magic is real and ponies hold mugs with their hooves, so I'm not super interested in the minute physics of brewing in a world that plays so light with its physics. This is more of a psychological discussion. It just took me 3 minutes to get there. Even if we assume that the cider in the show is an alcoholic, I want to go a step further and examine Dash's relationship with cider as the series continues. The super speedy cider squeezy 6000 opens on Rainbow Dash rushing Fluttershy out the door so they can be first in line for the start of cider season, and that gels with a saying that people who work in recovery sometimes throw around. A casual drinker knows when the liquor store closes. An alcoholic knows when it opens. But while it's possible this is compulsive behavior for Dash, the phrasing of the first day of cider season makes it seem like this is a special event that happens once a year, or that the first cider of cider season is somehow of higher quality than regular cider. And her desperation seems to suggest that she was somehow too late to try day one cider the last several years and didn't want to miss out. And addiction isn't just a case of wanting something really bad, it's a psychological compulsion. I don't know what's in her heart, but it seems to me to be within the realm of casual drinking. This running joke continues throughout the episode, with Dash becoming more and more flustered by her inability to snag a mug, and it culminates with what I think is the shot that birthed the joke in the first place.
That's made from Apple Family apples.
If I saw a real person doing this, I would be concerned for their physical and mental well-being, and I can definitely see where this shot would be troubling if played straight. Personally, I classify this more as a gag joke than a character-driven one. Contrary to popular belief, alcoholics can take jokes at their own expense. When they don't take the stale format of "Hi, I'm X and I'm a Y," there's a lot of absurdity in addiction that can be mined for material, provided the show warrants it. Here's my favorite drinking joke from my second favorite horse show, BoJack Horseman.
Give me a bottle of something to help me forget my problems. Oh, maybe not that strong. What is this, breakfast? Yeah, that's about right.
Back in 2008, the How I Met Your Mother gang staged interventions for each other's bad habits, only to turn the banner on themselves after they began staging interventions for every little idiosyncrasy they found. There are accessible jokes like the one about Doc Brown getting plastered off one shot of whiskey in Back to the Future Part 3, and weirdly subversive ones like the banana from Aqua Teen Hunger Force trying to drink rum from the U-trap with surgically attached banana hands. Where was I? Even My Little Pony makes cracks like these, and they don't even involve Rainbow Dash.
Pinkie Pie is an out-of-control party animal. What? It's true! I do have a problem!
Dash's love for cider makes a return in bats, if only because the nuisance they're dealing with in that episode directly impacts the availability of one of her favorite things.
No cider? No cider! We need to round up these monsters and we need to do it now!
There is one semi-explicit line near the end that hints at the nature of her beverage of choice,
First round of cider's on me!
but that may just be some subtle coding on the part of the writing team. Sometimes kid shows want to do a storyline that can't be done without a stand-in for some government-regulated substances, and to skirt the issue for censors, they'll replace it with a kid-friendly alternative. In fact, if you're currently under the legal US drinking age when this episode comes out, you were born after my favorite example of this trope. That 2003 episode of Codename Kids Next Door, where adults changed the legal drinking age of soda to 13, so Hoagie has to put aside his prohibition tactics and fight a giant mech piloted by Jeff Bennett doing an impression of Ricardo Montalban. Where was I? After that, there's one mention of drinking cider with Tank before Hibernation throws a wrench into their plans, and two more at the beginning and end of Top Bolt, where Dash can't help but brag about her plans to make cider with AJ. And surprisingly, that's the last mention of cider in the entire series. Except for a throwaway gag in the movie, they basically stopped mentioning cider altogether. I chalk this up to the fact that a vast majority of cider mentions take place in episodes with plots that involve its production and sale, but man, what if Dash gave up drinking during the events of Season 5? That's a really cool fanfic just waiting to be written. I might have to knock that out. Regardless, after the initial meme, I think interest in that facet of her character died out, or was at least understandably dialed back to fit the tone of a show intended for children. I guess I should also take a second to mention Berry Punch, the name given to the background pony who looks around suspiciously before getting herself a drink of punch in Call of the Cutie. Her model was deliberately chosen by storyboard artist Sabrina Alberghetti because the grapes on her cutie mark gave off big wine mom energy. After that, she's had a couple of shots alluding to her lushness, but I don't think she ever gets any substantial lines of dialogue about it in the core series, so this headcanon is exactly that. So yeah, party on, wine mom. I could just leave the binary question of is Dash an alcoholic at a flat no, but my research kicked up a piece of behind the scenes trivia that I absolutely have to talk about. Do you remember that joke from earlier about Pinkie partying too much?
It's true! I do have a problem!
In early 2014, Jason Thiessen and Jim Miller wrote an unproduced script for the show called Sugar-Free Pie, a story about moderation with a pretty clear allegory for substance abuse. I've always wanted to take a look at these episodes that never were in a video someday, but this one was especially relevant to the topic of the essay, so I'll break down the story beats quick before I discuss this mess of an episode. There's been a parasprite infestation that has crippled Equestria's sugar production. As a result, the town is urged to ration their sugar intake until the problem is resolved. The town devolves into a toilet paper-style hoarding frenzy, most especially Pinkie, who decides to go on an epic sugar bender while the getting is still good. Amidst the sugar high, she has a sucrose-induced epiphany where she decides that she needs to cut out sugar cold turkey. She kicks her sugar habit completely, and her friends notice an immediate improvement in her mental state. She's much more calm, and her newfound clarity helps her fix all kinds of problems around Ponyville. But she's also considerably more stoic and despondent, refusing sugary treats from her friends who prefer the fun Pinkie they used to know. In a depressive slump, Pinkie has a second epiphany where she realizes that she's no happier than before she cut out sugars. This appears to snap her out of it, and she enjoys a celebratory cupcake with her friends, noting that it's best to take everything in moderation. This is a really interesting premise, and it could have been cut for a variety of reasons. The main issue I see is that it would have been one of those episodes that tried to tackle an issue outside the show by way of an enormous, unwieldy metaphor. And with the track record of Friendship is Magic, that's a big gamble. When they do it well, we get episodes like Surf and/or Turf, Tanks for the Memories, or at least a rock hoof in a hard place. But when it backfires, we get totally jarring misfires like Over a Barrel, Fame and Misfortune, and Secrets and Pies. Ugh. Moreover, from the perspective of addiction, this script does some things right and a few things very wrong. Pinkie responds to a supply crisis by making the out-of-pocket decision to binge every sugary thing she can get her hands on, and that's actually accurate. Alcoholism is a partially psychological disease, and the preoccupation with consuming the addict's substance of choice is actually the core definition of alcoholism. Before I got sober, the scariest thing that happened on a regular basis basis would be coming home from work and saying, "I don't want to drink today," and my brain would do little involuntary pancake flips and respond with, "Yeah, you do." Giving up a part of yourself to a compulsion like that is terrifying, but it does happen. Deciding to quit mid-bender is also quite common. My mom has been sober for over 20 years now, and it all started because she randomly broke down crying in the doctor's office back in 2004. I'd advise against quitting any addictive substance cold turkey, since the 6-month sobriety success rate in some studies is as low as 5%. And that's not even counting the disturbing withdrawal symptoms for heavier users as your body attempts to readjust, including headaches, seizures, and night sweats. But I'll give it a pass, since Pinky has to make these bad, overcorrecting decisions in order for the lesson to land. It's also normal for an addict's mental acuity to improve in the weeks following sobriety. Maybe not to these cartoonish Homer doing Rubik's Cube extremes, but I definitely remember when I got clean, the first thing I noticed is that I was sleeping way better than I had in the last 3 years. Pinky's friends try to get her to indulge again, telling her that they miss the old Pinky, and I cannot stress this enough, don't ever do this. Think about how awful it would feel to be working on bettering yourself by cutting out a bad habit, only to hear your friends tell you they prefer you back when you were a mess. That sucks. Please don't ever do that. She ends the episode with this lesson about taking everything in moderation, which is good advice, especially since the target demographic is young enough to have probably never experienced a first-hand addiction crisis in the first place. If I have one nitpick with this episode, it's the small but important difference between moderation and sobriety. Those two concepts get confused even by adults, so I can see how it might be a little disorienting for a child audience, which might have something to do with the reason they cut it. But deciding that you need to cut back or stop something altogether is a decision that you have to make. I was lucky enough to have a wife and best friend tell me they were worried about me, but I had to be the one to decide to change. And while I'm thinking about it, if you're in the fandom and you think you may need to quit drinking or smoking or something else, give me a shout in the comments and I promise I'll find time to talk about how you're feeling. Some of the details may change based on what you want to quit, but a supportive atmosphere is a good start, and I'm willing to help if you need it. I'm kind of glad that my first favorite horse show shied mostly away from stories involving substances that affected the equine body, or if they were alluded to, it was put way back in the weeds, obscured by other story elements. It might be best to keep them out of this kids show. That's what fanfiction is for. Thanks a lot for watching. On February 27th, 2021, my plan was to watch the Friendship is Magic finale, record our podcast, and start editing, and I really clearly remember saying to myself, okay, don't drink until after the podcast. I really want this thing to turn out good, so I can't be slurring all over the place. And I didn't mean to stop drinking after that episode specifically, it just sort of lined up that way. If this episode gets taken down like the Fluttershy song, I'll find a way to re-edit this video and get it re-uploaded. In the meantime, remember to take care of yourself and your loved ones. I'm some horse on the internet. Thanks for watching.